I'm Chris Bussing. Welcome to my channel. It's committed to helping more people succeed in tech sales and use the career path to create more freedom and joy and fulfillment in their life. I've got a great guest, Tom Alaimo. He's the host of the Millennial Podcast. What's up, Tom? Thanks for joining. He's also a founder of Revenue Lab. And is it TA Sales, Tom?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So he's a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to talk about 3 keys to being successful in B2B sales and tech sales. And he's got an awesome immersion experience for salespeople coming up. I believe, what are the dates of the retreat?
July 14th through 16th.
Perfect. So we'll talk about that too. If you guys get value out of this video, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for weekly videos committed to your success in tech sales and in life. And without further ado, let's dive into it. So Tom, first off, how did you get into tech sales and what do you love about this career path?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I got into tech sales, it was kind of random. I was doing Cutco sales, if you're familiar, when I was in college, and stumbled into that. And I met someone at a career fair when I was in college that was working she was a recruiter for a tech company called Tech Target. It was in Boston.
Yeah.
And I came straight from tennis. I played tennis in college, came straight from practice, was wearing my, brought my rackets and everything. And she happened to play tennis too. And we didn't talk about sales or about me or anything, but we were shooting the whatnot. I don't know if I could swear.
You can swear. We've had some swearing.
Okay, we were shooting the shit about tennis for like 30 minutes, and she was like, "Hey, why don't we do an interview? About sales?" I'm like, "Oh, sure." So that ended up going well, and that's how I got into it. So it was just kind of a random, at the right place, at the right time type of thing. And I love so much about this profession. I consider it a craft and something that is much more than a job. And I think the beauty of it is that what you put in, unlike most jobs, what you put in is truly what, you can get out of it, both financially as well as who you can become as a person. I'm a much more confident person. I'm a much better, more emotionally intelligent person, much more in touch with my own self and my needs and my psychology and my mindset than I ever was before. And you can really impact people in a positive way. And so I'm in love with the craft of sales and what it's done for me and done for a lot of other people that I know.
Beautifully put. And it all starts with why. And it's just great that we're in a space where we can find meaning, we can make a lot of money, make great connections along the way, and really grow as a person. So speaking of finding success and getting the most out of this career path, what's your triangle for success? I don't know. Is that what you call it? Is it called the triangle for success?
Yeah, I think I'm still workshopping the name. But here's what I know. If you're in sales, I'm sure you can resonate with this. I've had times in my career where I've really focused on my sales skills, right? I've taken courses, I've read books, I've gone to seminars about how do I cold call? How do I run discovery calls, do demos, negotiate, all that type of stuff? Super important. And a lot of companies and a lot of people do focus on that. The second step, which I think is the most overlooked, the second leg, is what I call the inner game, right? It's what's going on between your ears. It's your psychology. It's what does the voice in your head sound like before you get on a big meeting? It's how do you react when you hear no 19 times in a row on cold calls and cold emails, right? It's how do you find fulfillment in this job when you're grinding and things aren't going your way? And where's this aligned with your deeper purpose, right? So these are bigger, deeper questions. And then the third leg of it is a community, like-minded people to you that are focused on the same things, that are all building each other up, supporting each other. And I've been in SaaS sales for about 8 years now, and I've had moments where I've had all 3 of those in alignment and I felt freaking unstoppable. And I've had more times than not where 1 or 2 of those legs of the triangle were not there. And either my results were not good or just my internal feeling was not good. Burnt out. I was stressed. I was exhausted. I felt lonely. I was anxious, all these different things that I think a lot of people feel. In my experience, and I've interviewed hundreds of people on my podcast, successful salespeople. When you have those 3 things in alignment, I think, the sky's the limit for whatever you want to do with your career in sales.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can hear my puppy. She's like shaking around, and we're in the WeWork today, and she's a little anxious. But it's cool that we have a similar amount of years of experience. We're basically the same age, both around 8-9 years of experience. And I totally relate to what you're saying. And I've seen in my own life where in career where certain legs of the triangle weren't in place, and things just didn't end up the way I wanted them to be. So can we start to dig into the first leg, which is sales tactics? One thing we talked about is prospecting. And this is a huge, broad question, but how do you prospect well? What goes into that? Can we start to peel that onion back?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are someone that's like an SDR or BDR, the main point of your job is prospecting. If you're an account executive, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I will say I've never met a successful salesperson that does not consistently prospect. If you're relying on, your BDR or your marketing team or inbound leads to come and help you hit your number, that's not a sustainable model. At some point, you're going to get burned by that. So it's extremely important, probably the most important thing, if in my opinion, of a tactic that, leads to long-term success. And what makes you successful? I think what I focus on is the problem. So I was told by a mentor, if I can describe my customer's problem better than they can, they're going to trust me. And so when I'm out there cold calling and cold emailing and LinkedIn DMing, like I still do, like I have been for years, I'm not trying to talk about how great my product is or service. All I'm trying to do is I'm a scientist with an experiment. And I say, a lot of people like you, Chris, are telling me they have this problem. When they do, here's how I help. Is this something that we should have a conversation about? That's more or less, that's not the exact words I use, but that's more or less what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
If you don't have that problem, I don't want to talk to you. If you're all good, you're doing great, and you don't, then cool, that's not a good use of my time. But if that resonates with you, and if I nailed the problem statement, then it should. If it resonates with you, great. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if what I'm selling, could possibly help with that.
I love that you're other oriented and you're focused on solving problems, because that's at the end of the day what it's all about. A customer will think, oh, wow, Tom gets my world. I actually do have this problem. Maybe you can help. I want to talk to him. So I'm curious, what means of outreach are most effective for you based on what you've seen? And, I'm thinking of our classic sales tools, or as author Mike Weinberg says in his book, New Sales Simplified. I just love that guy, and I had him on the channel as well. He refers to it as sales weapons, right? The phone, email, LinkedIn. Now you've got tools like Vidyard. You could send voice notes on LinkedIn. Someone who came on the channel shared that. I'm like, wow, that's innovative. What do you see as the most effective channel, or are you all about being multi-threaded?
Yeah, I think So for me, two of the most important things with prospecting, or three, is your consistency. So are you doing it every single day, right? Whatever you're going to set your standard at, 20 touches, 50 touches, 100 touches, doing that. Having a diversification of how you're doing it. So I do cold email. I use LinkedIn a lot because I'm active on LinkedIn and my buyers are there. I send videos. Sometimes I do direct mail or like send gifts and things like that. What else did you say? Voice notes on LinkedIn. I do that as well. And so I think those are really important. And then, just the persistence as well, right? We know that on average, it takes 7 to 9 touches for a cold prospect to reach back. That data is, spouted a lot, but it is true. So if you only send one great email, that person might be on vacation, right? Or they might just not look at that email, right? So it doesn't matter if you necessarily wrote the perfect email. If they didn't see it, it actually doesn't matter at all. So I do think that's the reason why I do all these different touches, is not to be annoying, not to be a pest, but some people answer their phone all day long. Great. I'll cold call that person. Some people look at their email religiously and they always get to inbox 0. Cool. I want them to see my email. The problem is I don't know that about my prospects. So I want to try them in these different ways and let them, if they want to respond, I'll let them respond on the vehicle, on the channel that, they're most comfortable with, or wherever I can catch them.
Yeah, one expression I came up with is the follow-ups fuel the finances. And I saw, like, when I was an SDR at Oracle, when I just started out of college, this is a classic story I tell. I reached out to a database administrator. I was selling database at the time. He didn't respond for 9 months, literally no acknowledgement. And then I found a 200K deal as an SDR. My account executive was on a bachelor party. I worked with his manager to close the deal. I got promoted. It got me down the path to work at Google. It literally, like, that deal, and maybe I'm a little dramatic, but in a way it catalyzed my career. And it came from being, also another expression I was, being pleasantly persistent, you know? Mm-hmm. So exactly what you're saying, like, it's not going to happen on the first email. When I was at Google Cloud, I had a customer engineer who was way smarter than me write this beautiful email to the CTO. It was incredible about our value prop. No response. Yeah. You know, because at the end of the day, it's more about being consistent. But do you have any good stories about, like, just being gritty and, like, eventually, like, a deal happening, or a customer that, like, was in a really bad mood and like showing a lot of resistance that you push past?
That's a great, first of all, your story, that kind of blows my mind. And I feel like everyone has a couple stories where you're kind of in the right place at the right time. You kind of, like, make that one extra call, that one extra email, what have you. And I remember early in my sales career, man, everyone in the first few months struggles. It doesn't matter how good you are.
Yes.
I just remember I was about a year in, and I'd missed quota for the first time, and it was March 31st. It was a Friday afternoon. So it was like the end of the week, end of the quarter. Yeah. And everyone left the office, and I was pissed, man. And so I'm, like, staying in the office. I'm like, what is going wrong here? What am I not doing right? I'm listening to a podcast. Mark Cuban is the guest. I forget what the podcast was. And so I'm like, you know what? F it. I'm emailing Mark Cuban. And so I found his email. I emailed him, and I'm like, hey, man, you're probably not going to read this, but here's what's going on. I know you used to be in sales, you know, blah, blah, blah. I missed my quota. And he responded in, like,
that's incredible.
Yeah. And he gave, like, it was pretty quick. It was a couple sentences, but he's like, here's 3 things that you need to do. Hopefully I can remember off the top of my head. One was like, you know, prepare your day better, schedule your day before you leave the office for the next day. One was like, you know, focus on, like, one thing that you can practice each month and do that thing really well, and then move on to the next. And off the top of my head, I forget the third thing, but he gave me these 3 things. And then from there, it was just like, that kind of gave me more fuel. That was like, all right, I'm going to get better at these skills. You know, I'm gonna, like, you know, I might need to stay a little bit later, and I'm going to make one extra call, make one extra email. So a little bit different than the question, but
dude, I love that response. And look at you improving. I didn't, tell you really the questions in advance like that. And just, that's incredible. You got Mark Cuban's attention. If you could do that, I mean, he's busier than anyone, then you probably get a bunch of executives' attention. And so, hey, another kind of unpredictable, unexpected question, but a fun one. Imagine, you know, I'm cold calling you and you pick up and I say, hey, this is, you know, Chris calling from Datadog. I realize I'm completely interrupting your day. So before I go any further, do you have 20 seconds for me to tell you why I'm calling? That's like one of many ways to open a call. And maybe that was wordy. I've tried that before and it's worked. There's many variations. How do you open the first 15 to 20 seconds of a cold call?
Yeah. Yeah, I like the permission-based opener. I don't use it. Well, I've gone back and forth. Right now, I'm not using it. So I would say something like, "Hey, Chris, it's Tom from Gong." If I was at, I used to work at a company called
cool.
Hey, Chris, Tom from Gong, how you been, man? And you'd say, probably like, "I'm doing good." But sorry, who's this?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I'm a nice guy, so I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm doing all right." Like, why are you? I'm sorry. Who are you? I'd probably.
Yeah, that's what most
people like. Sorry, no, you said your name. I'd say like, sorry, how can I help you? Yeah, because you did say your name.
And I'd say, I'd use we call this the 3x3, and because I research before I do a cold call. So there's different camps. Do you just make the call? Do you not? I do. So I'd say something like, oh yeah, Chris, sorry, I know I caught you off guard, but look, I noticed you were hiring SDRs over at Datadog, and and I saw this other thing about you. And by the way, I shot you this crazy email yesterday. So I was just following up on that. And I mentioned I'm from Gong. Does that ring a bell at all? And if you say yes, then it's like, cool. What do you know about Gong? And if no, then like, cool. Do you mind can I grab like 30 seconds and just tell you why I'm calling you about this specifically? And so I wait a little bit before the permission. And then, usually they're like, cool, 30 seconds, go for it.
I like that you're checking to see like what level of awareness they have. Like I've heard of Gong. It's an incredible platform. And by the way, I follow Chris Orlob, who I supposedly grew Gong from 200K revenue. I don't know if it was annual revenue to 200 million. And he talks, I saw a post about like amazing demos, and I know we're going to talk about that. So a little teaser to the audience, guys. And if you're getting value, which I do see some likes or comments from some of the people who have shown up, which guys, thank you so much for showing up live. Make sure to hit the like button because the algorithm will show this to more people who could benefit from the message. So we're going to talk about discovery. We're going to talk about demos. We're going to talk about mastering the inner game and community. But let's finish up on prospecting tactics. When it comes to cold emails, how important is personalization? We talked about focusing on problems.
Yeah.
But to what degree do you personalize? Like look at researching the individual, and is that a key ingredient as well? It's kind of a leading question, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it is. And I will let's just put this into context. I don't think I wouldn't prospect the same exact way if I had a different role. So if I'm someone in a velocity sales role and I'm selling $5,000 deals and I need to close 20 of them a month, I'm going to use an approach that's a little different than I'm an enterprise rep. I have 3 accounts and I need to break in and sell to Amazon. And if I do that, I'm going to be 300% to my number. I treat those differently because you can burn bridges in the first one. You can have more velocity. In the second one, if you burn the Amazon bridge, you're screwed in that case.
So one quick thing, Tom, is that you're right. There's a difference between transactional selling, which can be good, right? And you might find that in the SMB, small, medium business space as an account executive, or selling a software that you're selling to SMB companies overall. And there's a difference between that and transformational deals. Like you're selling cloud technology, or one of my mentors that you might know, Brandon Fluharty, he's got 7 steps to 7 figures. He made $1 million a year, 4 years in a row, selling these transformational SaaS deals that are changing the way businesses operate. Now that is the exciting stuff, I will say. Who wouldn't want to be involved? But one of my mentors did say it's kind of like oil and water. And in some roles, including my current one at a cloud consulting partner, I do have a balance of transactional and transformational, but trying to shift more there. Anyways, a quick random thought, but back to you on the distinctions and how personalization plays a part.
Yeah. So I do my research before I reach out to anyone, and I use that same bit of research on a cold call that I would on a cold email. So what a cold email for me might look like in general would be, I want my subject line to be 2 to 3 words. I want it to be kind of vague, non-salesy, but also about what the email's about. I don't want it to be deceptive. Yeah. So it might be like your hiring plans, right? If I was talking
about
your
cloud strategy, something like that.
Exactly. I love that. And I'd say, hey, Chris, and I'd insert the first sentence would be personalized. And I'd say, hey, I noticed your team over at Datadog's hiring 12 SDRs, congrats on the growth, something like that. That's a trigger for me in my business. So whatever you're selling, there's triggers. Is someone hiring? Someone has a certain title. Someone's using Salesforce or Google, or they got a round of funding, or whatever the trigger is that makes it easier for you to sell. That's what you should look for your research. So I'd find that. I'm not looking at Chris's puppy's name. I don't use that in outreach. Some people do, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a business reason to engage. And then I go to my problem. Hey, a lot of sales leaders that are hiring SDRs have this problem. Next line, here's how we help solve that problem. And then I have an interest-based call to action, meaning I'm not asking for time. I'm not asking for how's Wednesday at 3:00 look for a meeting. That's assumptive. I'm saying, be open to a chat, interested in learning more, something like that. Try to start a conversation.
Hey, so you answered a question that I was going to move towards, and you proactively answered it, which is how do you end an email, and what's your ask look like? And I might implement that myself because I actually do the assumptive, like when works. And I got that from a book, Exactly What to Say. But I realized there's no silver bullet, and I actually want to try on what you're saying. So can you say that one more time? It was are you open to a chat basically? And could you give the other variations?
Yeah, I have probably 5 to 10 that I just cycle through. But my thought is, I don't know you. You don't know me. I don't want to assume that you're interested in this. So I'm not asking you for the time. The other reason I don't ask for the time is if you're interested and you go to your calendar and you see Wednesday at 3 doesn't work, then it's like, oh, now I got to go respond to the salesperson and give them another time. And it's extra work on them. So the low friction is like interested in a chat. I'd say open to a conversation, ? I'd say interested in learning more, ? Something like that. Is this on your radar?
Does that sound interesting to you? Is something I've heard?
Yes. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. And so wrapping up on this, and then we'll talk about discovery calls. Shoot, I lost my question. Oh yeah. Once they it came back, long day, but once they come back and say yes, do you propose specific times to make their life easier? Like, how do you go about locking it in? It's a small technicality, but I'm curious.
Yeah, the way that I do it is I try to do 3. I try to make it, again, I'm trying to always make it as easy as I can in this stage. So I'd say, hey, Chris, sounds great. How's next Monday look? Or, feel free to send me some good times. If it's easier, here's my calendar link. And most of the time people just click on the calendar link. If you have one, Calendly or Chili Pipe or something like that, if your company invests in one, most people just book through that because they can just easily see what aligns with their calendar.
All right. So you sent me the Calendly link. I booked time, and here we are in our discovery call. What are some of the tips to maximize that? What I think is the epitome of the sales interaction. It sets the tone for the whole relationship.
Yeah. It's the backbone of everything and throughout the sales process, moving forward. So, okay. A few things that I think are most important when it comes to discovery. Number one is I'm coming prepped. I'm not asking, where are you? I can see that on your LinkedIn. I'm not asking your title. I can see that on LinkedIn. I'm using, I'm doing a little bit of research. I'm not going to spend my whole day on it, but I'm going to do a little bit of research and use that to guide my question. So I'll say, hey, Chris, looks like Datadog, grew, I saw your earnings call. You grew revenue 22% last year. Like, congrats. What do you think's contributing to that growth? I'll start off with just like, I want to flex a little bit and just show you like, okay, I came ready to go today. Dude. I'm not just like showing up like a random salesperson.
I got to say that, that's just got multiple benefits. One, it shows you did your homework. 2, it's like people love to be flattered and it makes them feel good. Yeah. It instills some pride. So I just, that's a double whammy. I love that.
Totally. And then I'm kicking off with, if it's inbound, I'll kick off and ask like, why do they want to, check out my company or something like that. If I got it from a cold email or something, I might ask like, hey, anything that stood out from that outreach that wanted to make you take today's call? Or I might ask like, hey, how familiar are you with what we do? I'll walk them through 30, if I take a step back, I'd actually start by doing like an upfront contract at the beginning of the call. Yeah. So I apologize for missing that. If for people not aware, I would say something like, hey, Chris, we have 30 minutes. Does that still work? Yeah. Okay, cool. What I was planning is like, spend like 10 minutes. I'd love to learn a little bit more about, what you're doing for your team over at Datadog. Happy to tell you a little bit about, what I do with the Revenue Lab. If it makes sense, we can talk about the next steps and, book a next call. If not, no harm, no foul. We can just move on to our next Zoom call and take it from there. Does that sound good? And you'd say,
yes. Hey, that sounds good. And I like that you acknowledge that there's a chance there's not a fit. Yeah. And you're not just going to force a square peg in a round hole. Now, hopefully there is a fit, but I like that little piece at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I even joke and it's like, hey, look, you're not going to hurt my feelings. You can just tell me straight up and, hard feelings. And I do feel like sometimes people, it's uncomfortable to like say no to a salesperson. So they'll yes you to death, and then they'll be weak on next steps, and then you'll chase them for 3 months, and it's just a waste of everyone's time. So I try to give them an out because it's not worth either of our time if you're not interested or it's not a good fit. So then we'll get into the discovery. So Chris Orlob that you mentioned he's a friend. He was my mentor at Gong.
Wow.
Actually.
Very cool.
Number one thing He was my director for a year. The number one thing I could not do in a Chris Orlob forecast call is show up without and commit a deal without telling you the quantifiable business pain that they had. So that's what I'm trying to get out of this call is I just want to understand what is the business pain that's quantifiable that I know that we can provide, that we can help with. That's what's going to drive everything for me. So I'm going to be curious. I'm going to dive deeper and ask a lot of questions, and try to make it conversational, to not like treat it like an interrogation. So that's like more or less the thought process. 5 or 10 minutes left on the call. I'm going to try to get into the next steps and see, have they seen enough? Have they heard enough that's interesting? And book the next meeting before we hang up, or they'll tell me it's not interesting and I'll say, all good. Do you know anyone else that might be a better fit? If they say no to that, cool, let's hang up. And it's no
I love that you asked for a referral, because if you look at it from a long-term perspective, as long as you had a good rapport and built a good relationship and you weren't too salesy, they very well might be willing to refer you to someone else. Yeah. Or you stay in touch, and sometimes in my space, I'm like, when does it make sense to follow up? Things can change in the future. Maybe a couple months down the road, 6 months down the road. Believe it or not, I play the long game, and I'll put a calendar reminder 6 months down the road. Now, we can't predict the future, right? Maybe I'll be at a different company, but that's something I do. And one other thing I wanted to drill into on the discovery piece is to get to the quantifiable business pain, which I'm assuming you're tying dollars to it. Like we're bleeding this much cash, or we're missing out on this much revenue. What does that look like? Could you give an example of what quantifiable pain looks like and the questions you might ask to get there?
Yeah, that's great. Because I did kind of like skim over that. So let me take the example of, so what I do right now, I have my own sales coaching and training company. Most of what I train on is helping reps outbound prospect, build pipeline. So if we were having a conversation, I might lead the conversation and say, hey, Chris, a lot of heads of sales development that I'm talking to right now are saying it's a really hard time to build pipeline, just based on the recession and everything that's going on in the tech market. Are you feeling the effects of that? Is that a challenge for you right now? You might say, no, we're killing it. But if you kind of play into it, or if you do have the pain that I'm kind of searching for, what I want to do is dig deeper, right? So if they have the first pain point, and say, okay, interesting, tell me a little bit more about that. And you tell me about, the SDRs, they stink, they're sending terrible cold emails, we're behind on pipeline. Okay, interesting. I might ask, what impact is that having on the business right now? Or like, what are the ripple effects that you see, or how does that show up in other parts of the business? I'd say, well, we're not hitting our pipeline numbers, and I just want to keep pulling that thread. I know it's uncomfortable. If you're imagining yourself doing this, it is uncomfortable for a while, but I want to play ball with Chris. I want to learn more. I say, Chris, so like, when you're not hitting your pipeline goals, like what happens next? Like, I know that might be a dumb question, but like what happened? And you say, well, we're going to miss our revenue goals. And if we miss them, we're not going to get our next round of funding, or we're going to miss our quarter as a public company, or etc. Okay, you're not going to hit your Series C funding. That sounds like a big problem, Chris. Like that, seriously, that's a $10 million problem right there. You don't hit that. So now I'm not selling the $5,000 that I'm charging for sales training, or 10 grand, or 1 grand, or 50 grand, whatever you're charging for your thing. We're talking about $1 million problem. And that's what you want to get to. And most things that you're selling, if you're in tech sales, there's a $5,000 solution to what you sell, and there's $1 million, maybe more, solution to what you sell. And you're trying to get to that big pain. And if you can't get there, you might not be talking to the right person, and that's fair. You might be talking to someone lower level. You might not be able to get that. You might need another call to get there. But this is assuming you're talking to like a decision maker, that like really a VP level maybe type person that can really feel that type of pain.
Gosh, if I found I had a $10 million problem, I would pay $1 million to solve that. I'm still, making a lot more money. Or I'd pay, hundreds of thousands. But if you're telling me the deal size, I don't know, if it's like 50K, 50 to 100K, like that seems like a no-brainer. So that makes a lot of sense. And that's cool that you have worked with Chris Orlob. He's been your mentor because, again, I've seen him out there on LinkedIn putting out great stuff, particularly on running amazing demos. So let's talk about, I'm sure you could speak to it just as well as him, running airtight demos.
Yeah. So common misconception about discovery is that it happens on one call. So I want discovery to happen on every single call.
Oh.
And it's not just like a point in time. So we do a good discovery. We get on a demo call. We have 45 minutes teed up, what have you. I want to start that call by first going through and recapping all the things we've talked about in previous calls, or the most important things rather. Chris, you told me, you're hiring 12 SDRs. You told me that you're struggling to hit your pipeline goals because of X, Y, Z. I want to be specific. We would call this the logo slide. You want their pain to be so specific that it could only be tied to that company's logo. It's not just we need more pipeline. It's we are 72% to goal for our pipeline in Q1. And because of that, we're going to miss this $12 million number. I'm just making stuff up. But you want it to be as specific as possible so that they feel special, they feel heard, they feel understood, and you can sell to that pain. And then you ask, has anything changed since our last call? Anything you'd add to that? Anything you'd subtract? No? Okay, cool. Then you're going to get into the demo. A few things that I think are important on a demo. Number one, and maybe most important when I think about it, is I want to only show what I think is going to be tailored to the pain that they told me about. Your cool tech product probably does 1,000 things. When I was selling at Gong, it's a really cool product.
Yeah.
I could demo that product for 10 hours.
It's got all the bells and whistles, right?
But you don't have that time, nor do you don't need it. It only hurts you to a certain extent. So what I might say is, here's the 3 things, Chris, that you told me are most important, right? Is that fair? Those are your top 3 priorities? Okay, cool. Yeah. We're going to spend some time going through all 3 of those, right? And so first, I'm going to get you to the first thing, the most important thing. I'm going to lead strong. I'm going to say, hey, Chris, you told me that X is a problem. Well, let me tell you a story of, how we help to solve that, right? So I'm going to address concern number 1 or pain number 1 with one part of the product and a story. I'm going to ask questions. I don't want to be monologuing like I am on this live stream. So I'm not going to ask questions like, does that make sense? Because that is like my number 1 pet peeve. I might say something like, Chris, how does that compare to what you're doing today?
Great question.
Or, walk me through what this looks like or how you're doing this, like in your current operation or something like that, right? I want you to open up. At the end of the conversation, or sorry, I'm not gonna speed that up to that. So we have our 3 priorities. I'm going to do that on 1. Cool. Now I'm going to go to the second priority. Chris, you told me that this, that pain point. It's interesting, when Acme company came to us, they're thinking about the same thing. And what we actually did was this. And I'm not talking about all the bells and whistles. I'm telling, again, a story of how we've solved that. And yeah, there's something that you're looking at the screen, and I'm going to tell you about what that is a little bit, but I'm telling a story, asking questions. I'm going to do it a 3rd time.
Beautiful. I got to say, man, real quick, the storytelling is powerful. So what I'm hearing is, don't focus on all the bells and whistles, only focus on the few pain points that matter to them and back up each pain point with a story. And I do have to nerd out and say there are studies on communication that have shown fMRI scans of people's brains when they're telling stories sync up. So that storytelling is powerful. So I just had to nerd out on that point, but back to you.
I love it. And if I'm talking too much, you could cut me off anytime.
No, not at all, dude. I am the king of talking too much. You've been great. And this is all about you sharing your insights. So again.
Okay, cool. So we've gone through our 3 key points. We've been asking questions. We've talked exactly about the pain points that they shared, and we're mapping it back to what we can do. We're telling the stories like you just mentioned. We're keeping an eye on the clock because this can go quick. And so I want to save the last 10 minutes to get a full kind of debrief. And so we went through all that, and I might say something like, Chris, Thanks for your engagement, during that. I see we got 10 minutes left. I just want to make sure we have, the proper space. You were telling me a little bit over these last few calls, about the challenges that you're having with building pipeline and, your SDR team. And, it feels to me like we've got a really good fit, to potentially help you out. Just want to check, how is this sitting with you right now? And so I want to just get a gut check, because the worst thing that I can do is assume that this call went well, not ask some of those questions, get off the call, and maybe we have a loose next step, or we have a call 3 weeks from now, show it, I never hear from you again. So if you're thinking something in your head, I want to call that out. And if I think something's fishy, I'll call it out before, during the call. Like, hey, Chris, it doesn't seem to be really resonating, or I don't know if I'm doing a good enough job explaining. Can you, how's this sitting with you? So I'll definitely call that out at the end of the call. And, in some cases, maybe they'll say, yeah, it looks great. Let's go to a contract. Okay, cool. Here's what that typically looks like. And I'll walk them through, and I might ask, I'll probably probe a little bit, but oftentimes they'll have other questions. They'll say, well, this is interesting. How does this compare to your number one competitor? What's the price? Oh, okay, this is interesting, but I think we're going to need someone else to check this out. We're going to need our finance person to look at this, right? There's going to be some sort of objection, and I want to have some time, the 10 minutes, to really have some dialogue, at least 10, to talk through that together, and then be able to comfortably land out a next step that we could mutually agree on based on whatever's going on. So I don't want to generalize. Sometimes that's a new stakeholder needs to get involved. Sometimes we need another demo. Sometimes it's something completely different. But I want to have time to address that and get a next step noted.
So my gut check is there is a fit. How do you negotiate like Chris Voss? He is a boss. How do you negotiate like Chris Voss, who wrote Never Split the Difference, one of the top FBI hostage negotiators in the world, to get the deal over the edge?
So when you say yes, give me more. So we're on the call and you're like, yeah, this seems.
Yeah. There's and hey, okay, so we do the demo, and you do the gut check, and there's a fit. And I don't know if you're going to dive right into negotiation, but what do negotiations look like? And can you give us some hacks? I'm assuming too, Chris Voss is such a great thought leader, and I know you made a post and referenced him, so I was making an assumption, but give us some negotiation hacks to get the deal over the edge.
Yeah, for sure. So a few things. One, once you get to, first, before you even get to negotiate, let's just make sure we're all confirming you are the vendor of choice. We do want to move forward.
Cool.
Assuming that we handle these things, are we ready to move forward? Some of those basics, the last thing you want is to negotiate. You give a big discount, and then they bring up, oh, actually, we're going to do a pilot with your competitor. And then it's like, oh, man, my boss just, went out with him, gave me this discount, whatever. So,
and also, Tom, the timing and that there's even budget. Early in my career, I was afraid to kind of afraid to confirm budget. And I don't know, something about money, but obviously you got to confirm those things too. Imagine they don't have the funds, so.
Yeah, for sure. So you want to confirm that. You want to confirm, who the decision maker is, who's the signer of the contract. Yeah. And so what I might say also is, hey, Chris, that's great. Happy to get into talking about the pricing and this and that. This is typically what the process looks like on our end. Sometimes you might have to go through a legal review, security review, IT review. Sometimes your product doesn't need all that stuff and you don't need that. But I like to be the quarterback of the deal. I want to make them feel like I've done this thousands of times and that they're in good hands and that they're following a process that is known and proven. While also, I'm happy to make adjustments to what you need at your company. If you have a big company and you have certain processes, let's talk through that. So that I want that context to be set. If we're in actual pricing negotiations and things like that, I want to know a few things. I want to know pricing is what is the biggest objection or the biggest kind of point of negotiation. So a question that I ask typically, because everyone's going to ask for a discount, I'd say, Chris, thanks for bringing that up. Typically when people talk about price, it's usually one of three buckets. Either one, they might not see the full value compared to the price of what I'm talking about here. The second is like they just don't have the budget. Like it's really a financial issue. And then the third is they just maybe want to get a great deal, and that's some people's job, in procurement is to get the best deal. Where would you bucket yourself in one of those three? And if they say they don't have the money, that's going to be hard. Maybe you could do billing terms or something, but that's really hard, and that's a legit concern. If they don't see the value, I fall on the sword and say, hey, I haven't done a good enough job. You go back to the pain that they told you, how you can help solve it. You're going back to the quantifiable pain, right? Your problems, if their problem's worth $1 million and your thing's $100,000, you're trying to make that case. And if they just want the best deal possible, then your company might have a policy. But I say, okay, typically there's a few levers that we can pull. The things that I can move on my end are like the contract length. We can talk about the number of users. And we can talk about like when the signature happens. Do you have flexibility on any of those three? And that might help me with what we're talking about here. And if they say, yeah, we can sign today and we can double our users. Okay. Bet you if I go back to my boss, I have some wiggle room there. So I want to know, are they willing to do like a give get? I'm always thinking in those terms. I'm happy to make moves, be creative, but I'm not going to just do it blindly. If you just keep asking for discounts and more this and more that, and I'm not getting anything in return, there should be a mutual kind of respect going on. And so I think about that. And I just think about like knowing your position. So for example, this is the last thing I'll say in negotiation for now, is 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, if you were in SaaS sales, it was a really good time. Companies were really well funded. If you had a good product, you could raise prices. You could hold firm on price. Right now, there's a lot of companies that are struggling to pull in deals.
Yep.
Buyers have a lot more power. And so is it worth fiddling for that extra 3% discount and maybe losing a deal about that? Or is it better to just like maybe give in sometimes, leave a little meat on the bone, get this deal done and move on? And that's a very like subjective thing that you need to learn about your own company and your team. But there's some emotional intelligence to know, when do I need to hold the line? There's a time for that. There's also a time for like, hey, let's just get this deal done and let's move on to the next one.
Well, I'm certainly sold on your sales tactics. We talked about everything from prospecting, discovery to airtight demos and negotiation. Let's move on to an aspect of being successful in sales and in life that's overlooked, the inner game. Can you talk a little bit first about that voice inside our heads that we all have?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, in like 2019, I was about 5 years into my SaaS career. I was named the rep of the year at my company. I was making more money than I ever had before, and was doing really successful. And I felt terrible inside. I remember having a panic attack one day at the office, and like holed up in a conference room, and then like had to leave the office because I was just so stressed and so uptight and wasn't comfortable in my own skin. And it was at that point that I started learning more about things like meditation, things like journaling, things like learning about psychology, going to therapy, trying to understand like why I'm thinking the way I am, performance psychology, things like that. And so everyone has a voice in their own head, right? And it's not weird, but you're always kind of talking to yourself. You're saying, good job. You're saying you can do it. You're saying, man, I'm tired today. I'm cold today. I'm nervous about this call. I'm anxious. This voice is always chattering, and it's always saying something positive or negative or indifferent, but it's always talking. And so being able to help control what's going on in your head can have a huge impact on your performance, just on how you feel on a day-to-day. And I've always felt like the better that I feel as a person and the more aligned I feel and like good and energized, that's going to show up in my sales results. It's not vice versa. It's not when I close a big deal, I feel good, and that helps me close more deals. So we can get into more specifics, but that's like the general concept.
I did a leadership development seminar called Landmark that was pretty powerful. And they had an exercise where we stopped and we listened. to that voice in our heads. And if we just listened, it would be saying things. I might be saying like, oh my gosh, it's so quiet right now. What are we doing? Like it's always talking. And it's amazing if we can invest in ourselves and implement good habits like mindfulness, get to know ourselves and find alignment and fulfillment. The voice narrative can really change to be a lot more positive. Hey, we're human though. We're going to go through dips and valleys and we're going to have negative self-talk at times. But I just think even touching on this concept of the voice in our head is really important. And I wanted to dance to another aspect of the inner game, which is finding fulfillment in work. What does that look like or mean to you to find fulfillment in work?
Yeah. So I think there's levels to this, right? So, and I understand that people are in different positions, like, financially and in their lives. So I want to just be able to speak to both of those. So there's a level of fulfillment when you think about, if you've ever done an exercise of like, dreaming of like, what do you want to be, when you grow up, quote unquote, where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I want to be the CEO of a business. I want to run a sales team. I want to retire early, whatever it is. And trying to do that thing and get to that place where you're doing like what you think your dream job is and like putting yourself in a position to get there. And maybe that's as a salesperson, maybe that's something else. I don't know. One that takes a lot of inner work. It takes a lot of time. And also it takes the luxury of, there's a lot of people out there that take sales jobs because they need to pay bills and they've got 150 grand of student loans, or they have children, or they have whatever. Everyone's got different situations. And so I also think that there's something to be said about you're in your current role and where can you find fulfillment in that, in the day to day. So everyone has parts of their job that they probably don't like. Updating the CRM, internal meetings that should have been emails, stuff like that. But if you look close enough, there's probably a reason why you got into sales and a part of the job that you can really identify with. Maybe it's the product you sell and you love it. You love security. You love, this software that helps veterinarians because you love animals. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just you love working with people. Or maybe you love the competitive aspect of it. Or maybe you just you love making money and you just want to like make stacks, and that's cool too. What's the part of your job that you can like really, really lean into, right? And identify with that as like, that's going to be where I'm going to find fulfillment. Yeah, this isn't my dream job. Maybe this isn't where I want to be for 20 years, but I love working with people. I love competing. I love getting on the phone. I want to make 100 grand this year because I want to pay off my debt. Okay, lean into that, and that'll help get you to the next point where you need to get to in your career, where maybe you can get closer to that like 10-year goal, or 20-year goal, or wherever you want to get to it towards the end. But there's little parts of like the process that you can figure out and try to like, help find fulfillment in and find joy in.
Yes. I do think it all starts with defining our personal vision, because that's our emotional link to our work, and our work should fit into that and enable it. And that emotional connection, maybe it's, you have a future. I talked to one client of mine that I'm coaching on breaking a tech sale. It's like, I want to have a family and I want to be able to support him. And like, wow, that's really powerful and meaningful. And that's what can drive you to do the tough things that we know are needed to be successful, like putting in the extra research and preparation, making the cold calls to strangers that might reject you, and pushing through, like you said, 19 rejections. So I love what you're saying about finding meaning, defining vision, finding purpose. I wanted to hit on two more aspects of the inner game and then bounce over to community, and then talk about your immersion experience that you're hosting, Arise, for sellers in Austin at my stomping ground. So I can't wait to see you.
Yes, sir.
But tell us about performance psychology. I noticed we were talking offline and you mentioned that performance psychology, like what is your performance psychology? That's the question I posed to you. What does that mean?
So, if anyone is, I won't get on the sports topic for long because it's played out in sales. But if anyone is a sports fan, they probably have seen that there's a lot of sports psychologists and performance psychologists on pretty much every major professional sports and like Division I college sports team, because the link between the mind and the body is so strong. And there's, excuse me, there's only three things that you can train. One is your body. One is your craft, whatever your skill set is, and the other is your mind. You can actually train your mind to be more resilient, more positive, anything that you want it to be, really. And so when I think about performance psychology, I think of, how do I get myself in the right state of mind? I feel like I cannot control so many things about sales. I can't control my customer. I can't control their reaction. I can't control if they show up to the call, if they have budget, all these things. But I can control me. And so I can control how present am I, how focused am I, how confident am I when I get onto a call, how diligent was my prep and my research, how empathetic can I be towards the customer. All of these things that require, they don't require, certain, they do require a skill set, but it can be learned. Yes. And it's really coming through effort. And so to me, I think, sales is one of the best, but it's one of the toughest jobs because there's so many things that can happen outside of your control that just make it really challenging. And so for me, I'm always trying to focus, like, how do I not get too high? How do I not get too low throughout all the good and bad things that happen? But more importantly, like, how can I just be present? How can I just have this conversation with Chris and I'm not worried about Slack? I'm not worried about my phone. I'm not worried about I've got to take the dog out in a half hour or whatever it might be. And that's, to me, when I'm thinking about performance psychology, it's really just how do I show up and be my best every single day?
And to wrap up on the inner game, let's get back to basics. What are some of the basic things that we need to take care of in order to show up as our best self and master that inner game?
Yep. So a couple basics, I think, are, are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? Yeah. Are you spending time with friends and family? I've had periods of time where I was only getting 4 hours of sleep a night. Not smart. I was not ever hanging out with friends and family. Not smart. I was eating like crap. Not smart. So there's some of these basics that you want to just take care of yourself. And then I think something that's been helpful for me, two other things I'll mention is having a routine. So having a morning routine, it doesn't have to be 5 hours long, but just something that helps to make me feel good before I go to my work email. I don't want to just wake up and go straight to email. And so I can elaborate if you want, but just like anything that makes you feel good. If you want to work out, you want to drink water, you want to walk your dog, you want to read a few pages of a book, you want to meditate, pray, something that just gets you into a good spirit. So that's one. And then taking, slight breaks throughout the day as well of just like, if I'm on back-to-back calls, I need 5 minutes, give me some air, or 15 minutes. I'm going to take a walk around the block, take your lunch, take your 30 minutes, decompress, because it's just, your brain is not wired to be on the go for 10 hours a day. You're just not going to be sharp that whole time. So taking breaks will allow you to show up better for your next call or your next prospecting session or whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Once you're in tech sales and you're crushing it, like, you can get to a point where you're having like 12 calls a day and you just need a breather. And even me, after this interview, it's been a long day. And, this in particular, though, has been energizing for me. I love these conversations, but I'm going to go walk my puppy. Like you said, it's just a simple thing, sit in the park, be in nature, maybe do a little meditation, and just finding these little opportunities to recharge within the context of our day. And I will go back to sleep. I've been thinking about sleep a lot. And I watched a Dr. Andrew Huberman podcast. He's a top neuroscientist that I'm sure you know of him and maybe the audience does. But sleep, oh my gosh, that's so simple, but it's so important for us to show up as our best selves. So let's talk about one final aspect, the third ingredient of becoming the best seller and really person that you can be, and that's building community. And so how is community wired within us as a human? Like, doesn't it go back to like caveman and cavewoman days?
Yeah, I mean, it really is like we are, as humans, we are a tribal animal species. Like that's how we were created. I'm not a scientist, and there's plenty of other resources you can check out, but it's in our biology. And so I'll open up again and tell you, so I spent the first few years of my sales career mastering the skills. Then I felt burnt out and I started mastering the inner game. And then, I had it dialed in. I was meditating. I was sleeping, I was eating well, I was doing this. And then I looked around and I'm like, where are all my friends? Oh yeah, I haven't seen them in 6 months because I've been all day long. I've been meditating and selling and, praying and this and that. And there's a lot of time for that, but there's something so strong to having like-minded people that are like-minded in that they can help, you're doing something similar so you can relate to each other. Doesn't mean you have to have all the same beliefs and things like that. I think it's good to surround yourself with diverse people, but like-minded in that you're working towards similar goals and you can relate to each other. You can support each other through the ups and the downs. And so I actually got up and I didn't find that when I was in San Francisco. So I got up in my car and I moved to Chicago, where I knew I had a community last year. And my life has been a lot richer and a lot fuller being near some friends and some family and loved ones that I could relate to and that I could grow with and were inspiring me and were pushing me to do better and things like that. And so no one does it alone. The person that you think is the coolest person in the whole world, I promise that they had a lot of help, and no one's going to get to where they want to get to alone. So you need to find people that can help support you and challenge you and be there for you when you need it most.
Yeah, love_TayP. Thanks for showing up. And I'm not sure what your actual name is, but she said, Tom, I love the honesty and I appreciate the vulnerability. And that's something I try and be big on myself, just sharing your personal journey and some of the challenges as you've evolved to get to where you are today. And one thing I wanted to call out is there's a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that you probably heard of. It's a classic. I think they even created training programs and they go to top companies. And it talks about moving from a place of dependence as a child to independence, right? You want to be an independent adult, but then moving to the highest level of existence, which is interdependence. Being independent as a person, but being able to lean on others to synergize and go further. And that's actually one of the key habits in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that's what we're doing, Tom. We're amplifying each other, expanding great ideas, and we're synergizing with everyone here, showing up today and growing together. So cheers to that synergy. And wrapping up on community, can you talk a little bit about how remote work has impacted our ability to build community? Because we know we love it for the flexibility, but has there been a cost in terms of connecting and building community?
There is a cost. And look, I am a fan of remote work. I like being able to travel and, be flexible and things like that. But when I started my sales career, where I worked in most companies, you were in a sales floor, and I had a sales class of like 20 other people that all started on the same day. We're all doing the same tough job. And so we would hear each other on our cold calls, failing and succeeding and helping each other out. And we'd sit down for coffee and lunch and happy hours. And, those were some of the most formative years of my life, certainly of my selling life. And it's really hard to replicate virtually. You can listen to calls, you can get on Zoom chats, but it's really harder. It's a lot harder to build relationships over Zoom or, over virtual, through your laptop than it is in person. It's possible, but it's more challenging. It's different. It's different than shaking hands or giving someone a hug. So, there's certainly a trade-off. And so if you're someone, especially if you're someone that started in sales within the last 3 years since COVID, maybe you've never worked in an office before, or very rarely, I think I would strongly encourage you. We'll talk about the immersion, whether you want to come to that or just wherever you are in the world, find a local community. There are people that are in sales, for example, in every major city, even small towns, that have communities, that have a meetup, they have a happy hour, they have a dinner once a month or a conference. Go out there, start meeting people, or search people out on LinkedIn that live in the same region and hit them up and say, hey, would you ever be down for coffee sometimes? It looks like we're both in the same thing. Like, I could really use someone to talk to and bounce ideas off of. And can't tell you how many good friends have actually met on LinkedIn, and then we link up in person and it just we click. So the importance of community cannot be understated, in my opinion.
So let's talk about the Arise immersion experience and retreat that you're putting on in Austin, Texas, coming up. Guys, I linked that all the information you need in the description of this video, and you can reach out to Tom and have a conversation and talk more about what makes you tick, your goals, and if it's a fit for you. I highly encourage you to check it out, and I'll be around in Austin as well. So hey, maybe we could even get a coffee too if you have a breather. But can you talk about what inspired this and the kind of the backstory, and then let's finish up by talking about what it's actually going to be like and who it's for.
Yeah, I mean, so it really started as a just some conversations I was having with two friends of mine who are also sales leaders, Alex Kremer and Clara Johnson, SaaS tech sales leaders, and we were kind of vibing on this topic of going through our own experiences, sharing, and just we kind of came to that idea together of like those three legs, the triangle, the three-leg stool, whatever you want to call it, of the sales tactics, the inner game, and the community of how important that is. And we were just kind of like looking around and didn't see any sort of retreat or community that was really focused on those three things. And so we decided, screw it, let's make our own and let's see if people like it. And the response has been crazy, a lot more than actually we thought off the bat. Dozens of people emailing us and DMing us. We're only doing about 20 people. So what it is, it's a 3-day retreat immersion in Austin, Texas, July 14th through 16th. It's going to be an intimate group. So it's going to be about 20 people. We're capping it at that because it's our first one, and we just want to have a small group and a really tight community. And we're going to focus on all three of those things. So we have guest speakers coming in who are going to do expert sessions on negotiation and discovery and prospecting, much deeper than we talked about today. We're going to have people talk about the inner game. So we have a Buddhist monk, for example, coming in and doing some sessions with us. As well as Alex and Clara talking about finding your why and your vision and your life goal and things like that. We're going to tap into that, and then we're just going to have fun. We're going to do big dinners. We're going to do maybe some cold plunges, maybe some yoga in the morning, stuff like that to help build community and open up and try to make friends truly and find people that you can align with. So if that is remotely interesting, definitely check out the link. And there's a link to, on that website that you can fill out a form and we'll have a call, or you could just DM me on LinkedIn and happy to have a conversation. But that's, we're jazzed about it, mid-July. And we've got about 10 seats filled up. So we got about 10 left. And once we're at 20, we're going to cut it off. So if people are interested, definitely let me know.
What a unique opportunity to connect with Tom, with the other leaders that are hosting this intimate experience, to build meaningful connections and obviously learn a lot about yourself, define your vision, and of course about sales. And what I'm really intrigued about is the monk coming in to speak. That sounds really interesting. And ice baths. I'm a big fan of ice baths, and I'm actually interviewing the founders of a company that makes ice baths. I was just talking to them yesterday, called Having a Cold One. And I just met them. I am so big on ice baths. And there's a guy, John Williams, who I don't know if he showed up today, but he's been following the channel, and he just got into tech sales for the first time at a company, Karam Healthcare, really great company. And he always jokes with me. We have an inside joke about ice baths because we just met each other. We haven't known each other a while, but I put on a few shorts on me in ice baths. So it's my thing. But super excited for it, guys. I encourage you to check it out. At least connect with Tom on LinkedIn. Check out the link in the description of this video to learn more about this immersion experience. Again, called Arise, right? Tom, what's the official name?
Yeah, it's the Arise Sales Retreat is what we're calling it. But yeah, you can check it out on that link. Would love to talk with people.
Perfect. And Tom, thanks so much for the time. Thank you to everyone who showed up. I think we still got 4 folks that have stuck with us and gone the whole distance, but we had up to 10 at one point. This has been a lot of fun. Feel free to connect with me too, guys. And of course, subscribe to the channel. I got your back with more great interview guests like Tom. And I can guarantee you this isn't the last time, Tom, that we'll have a conversation here. And check out the Millennial Podcast as well, right? I'll link that too, Tom. But any other final words before we sign off?
No, I mean, just thanks for everyone that was rocking with us and people putting in the comments. And just, I have to acknowledge you, Chris, for, thanks for having me on. And, I've been checking out, all the stuff that you're putting out on YouTube and really helping the sales community. And I've enjoyed, we haven't known each other long, but I've really enjoyed getting to know you and everything that you keep dropping. I'm just like, this is my guy right here. So I'm excited. We'll be getting together when I come down to Austin. No doubt about it.
I feel the same way. I can't wait to see you in Austin, shake your hand in person. Guys, to your success in tech sales and in life, happy selling and happy living. And I'll see you in the next one.